All right, Brian, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. My name's Brian Herskovets, Director of Franchise Operations for the Angry Crab Shack here, based out of Mesa, Arizona. Joined the Angry Crab Shack a little over a year ago, about a year and a half now. Came from them with a large franchising company, Kahala Brands, for 6 years before that. Been in this industry for about 27 years. No college degree, but 27 years of dishwashing, prep cook, line cook, manager, coming up through the ranks. We always say that there's two forms of education in this business. There's the paper, and then there's the experience. So I like both when it comes to it, but definitely a longer, harder road to come this way for sure.
No, that's awesome. And honestly, the way you described it there with the two ways of getting into this, I love that. And it's funny, like I had a chat with the head of leadership development training at Chick-fil-A last week, and she literally was talking about that exact thing where they talk about having college degrees as a prerequisite for evolving up the ranks in that company, and they've kind of gotten rid of that for a lot of different sort of positions, and basically they found that it basically not alienated, but it kind of removed a lot of high potential folks that they had. It almost created like an artificial ceiling for no reason. And they'd actually removed that from their leadership development program now, which again, to your point, is like, finding those, there's two types of education that can get you to where you need to go in this space. Sure. I guess jumping right in, because that's actually a nice little topic in and of itself, is like, I always refer to all the other calls I have because I speak to all your peers, and I had one guy on who's the director of operations at Amman Hotels. So actually one of them in Arizona, the Amangiri, those very fancy sort of 5-star hotels. And we were talking about like when you're looking for like talent in the organization, he was saying you can train service, and we used the phrase je ne sais quoi, like a French phrase because he was French. And it's like, what is that something that somebody has that you can find them to like promote them up the ranks and kind of graduate them into like kind of more senior positions? And to your point, as somebody who's kind of come through that all the way from like dishwasher, are there things that you look for in people? Are there kind of intangibles that you see, that certain je ne sais quoi, as it were, that like you look for?
For sure. I think work ethic is huge. Personality is a must you have, but you can take a look at either a body of work of someone coming up through the ranks and whether it's all in one location where they started out at a lower position and they've worked their way up over 5-6 years, shows a drive, shows work ethic. Even if it's multiple jobs and switching to go up, they're not making lateral moves across. They're trying to work their way up. It shows a lot of resolve, a lot of hard work. I think you look for things like that. Obviously, having that piece of paper that says I'm certified, I'm a college graduate of this, is always nice. But you can take a look at somebody's history and the trajectory that they've taken, whether it's with one single unit or one single brand or multiple brands. I think it kind of pops out on the paper. And so I think that's one thing we look for when we're searching through possible candidates.
Yeah, it's interesting because I hear a lot from people that it's actually kind of hard to find that kind of talent at the moment, in the sense that seems to be the kind of key roadblock in sort of like new store openings, kind of finding the talent in the organization across like multiple locations, in the sense that we've had like a post-COVID sort of like boomerang where there's just been like, get talent in the door, get people in. Then it's a question of like getting quality people in. And it's like, how do we find that sort of quality? Like filter that down a bit. And now we're into that kind of conversation about retention and keeping those people and like keeping an eye on the talent to like graduate them up. Like, do you find what's your kind of perception of sort of like the overarching job market for hiring sort of hourly workers and finding that kind of talent, those diamonds in the rough?
Yeah, for sure. I think to your point, the pandemic kind of switched the tables on us and made it, an employee world instead of an employer world. So, now it is about still trying to find those diamonds in the rough and, becoming more, yes, especially on new restaurant openings, hiring the masses and then being able to identify quickly and what that looks like. And if you have those kind of check marks to identify during that training session, that 2 weeks that you're there, for us at least, and being able to identify and then retain at that point. So what do you do once you've identified those people that are potential leaders, potential closers for your front of the house staff, potential leads in the kitchens? It's instant gratification almost for them, to say, hey, we see this, we identify this in you, we want to potentially move you into this position. Are you willing and able? Is this something that interests you? If it is, we'd like to see X, Y, and Z out of you. You can't just automatically throw it at them because it's really done nothing to that point, but giving them the bait and saying, hey, but we'd like to see X, Y, and Z done. And that brings them into it and shows you even more, because if they're willing to do that, to try to get to that position, then you have something. So it has to be, it can't be just free, without the work, but there needs to be gratification on the employee side along with getting something for the employer at the same time.
Totally. And I've heard a lot from people that like we're in an extreme sort of training phase now, in the sense that because the battle for talent is so hot and the battle for good talent even hotter, that keeping and training those folks that you have, because there's been such a, almost like what a lot of people have said to me, that a managerial class, like a GM class of people have kind of left the industry since COVID, and that there is that sort of leadership gap that's kind of missing. I guess for you, in like sort of your role, like how do you think about like retention and policies and training? Like, do you have formal ones, or do you have like kind of talent scouting, or how do you go about trying to figure out how to find your sort of like managers?
It's a great question. We use multiple different platforms. We do have recruiters for specific like general managers, something more high level for the individual units. But for the most part, it's grinding, for our kitchen managers, AKMs, AGMs, assistant managers. Preferably we'd like to see them come up through the ranks, promoting from within. But, to your point, there's kind of a drought out there because it really hit all of us. I mean, the whole spectrum. I feel like the restaurant industry lost 2 years of talent in the pandemic. So it's like, the kids that were going 19, 20, 21 into college and working in restaurants, and finding a love for it, never went to the restaurant. And there's a big chunk that were in the restaurants, but due to the pandemic, just stayed at home and did school, online college, and got degrees and went somewhere else. And so we lost a big chunk. And I think we're seeing that across our management lines, because those mid-20s, late 20s now that we would be promoting into our manager ranks are not there. So, so we're about everything, currently right now I'm grinding through Indeed just to find some applicants, and, doing whatever it takes, phone interviews and in-person interviews, just to do my due diligence, because to your point, they're not all quality out there anymore. And it's, you have to put in the work to find the right ones. And if you're not, then you're just going to find yourself in a repeating circle of hire, train, quit, hire, train, quit. You have to be selective no matter what.
Totally. And it's interesting. I had a call yesterday with a guy who is the chief operating officer of a brewery company in Southern California, like 9 locations. And we were using the phrase ghosting. And he's like, man, like just like getting people to like show up to the interviews. Is that something that you kind of see as well? Like, yes. Or like,
I know my corporate counterpart on the other side had 2 new hires not show on orientation day. Went through the whole process, hired, accept position, and then didn't show up on orientation. I was like, that's unheard of. You know, it's something brand new. You know, I got used to being ghosted in interviews and stuff. And it's like, okay, yeah, you know, you click, you set up interviews, you set up 10 interviews and 4 show up. You know, and that's something you got used to. But this is a whole new ballgame with managers and getting to that point and then deciding, nah, I don't want to do it. You know, so it's different.
It certainly is, you know, and I guess like it's interesting because, you know, you think about the trends post-COVID and sort of like your hourly and your salary, like sort of workers. Are there things that you see like pre and post-COVID, especially like the question is more about like post-COVID kind of trends? Like, are there things you're seeing in terms of like the demands and the requests of staff now versus like what they were like pre-COVID?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of alluded to it earlier about how the restaurant industry or the hospitality industry was what did you do for me today, not yesterday, nothing like that, you know, pre-COVID. And it was, you know, it was really controlled by the employer. I think we lost a lot of that control over the pandemic, and, you know, and not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, kudos to the employee, because you know what? I came up in this industry where it was $2.13 an hour, and you know, you worked until you worked. You get fired if you didn't show up, even though you worked 4 years straight. You know, and it's like it wasn't a healthy place, and it took a different person to come up through it. But you know, do I wish I had some of the benefits that the employees do now? Heck yeah. And so I can't fault it, you know. So, but this industry has to adapt. We have to go with it and accept that, you know, our employees are not just you know, expendable, you know, numbers that we have on the payroll. These are actual people that require benefits, that require things for their families and quality of life that goes with it in any other industry, you know. So I feel like it's a lot different, but potentially for the better, you know, because maybe we can retain employees for a lot longer if we're adapting to those benefits that other industries have. Totally.
Somebody was saying to me recently that COVID allowed them to reset on culture. Mm-hmm. And I think more broadly about, to your point, how can we as a business, you know, like, it's not like you're going to compete with potentially on like a dollar amount for say like against Amazon. You know, if somebody wants to work in a fulfillment center, and you're just not going to compete on a dollar amount for that. Right. But there's a certain emotion when it comes to working in hospitality, because it's such a people business. And so given how, I suppose, broadly, I don't want to use the word toxic, but like there are a lot of things about working in hospitality that potentially were just not like nice for a lot of people. And we've had a bit of a sort of a culture reset. And, you know, Brian, I've spoken to so many people on this podcast now, and it sounds to me that, like, you know, there has been an enormous culture reset in terms of like what people are willing to accept for working in a restaurant and what people are willing to do. And like, you know, I was listening to Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential there on air and what you're talking about, you know, like, you know, back say when it was $2.13 an hour and you could work for 1,000 days in a row and miss one day and get fired. Yeah. But that kind of like stuff has now started to change. Are there kind of, you know, policies or practices that you're implementing, say, at the Angry Crab now? Like, are there things that you're doing there that are sort of in this nouveau culture experience that you like would never do years ago, that wouldn't have been unheard of to do years ago?
Yeah, I think it's a natural evolution. You know, I don't know if it's stuff that I wouldn't have done years ago, but more stuff that should have been there years ago, you know. And it's the culture piece is, to your point, it's not so much about the dollars. Yeah, you know, the restaurant itself, the money that you can make at the restaurant is always going to have an effect on your front of the house, your servers, your bartenders. That they're very driven that way. But for us here at Angry Crab Shack, it's really about the inclusion of possibilities for them here. So it's, you know, whether it's becoming a certified trainer, a new restaurant opening trainer, traveling trainers, to do charity work that doesn't require your own money, you know, but gets you that fulfillment that you've volunteered to do an event for Phoenix Children's Hospital, or, you know, did it with the Veterans Coalition. And so they're getting rewarded, you know, emotionally, as well as being a part of, you know, a successful restaurant and making the money and having the benefits of course, your basic human benefits of healthcare and, you know, paid time off and stuff. So we really try to include our hourlies and our salaried managers into the possibility of being involved in all these different charities that we work with and events that we do, to really try to encompass all of that culture into it, you know. So along with, of course, providing the opportunity to move up.
Yeah, it sounds like to me that you're definitely kind of speaking to like a sort of a greater ownership culture. And you had mentioned earlier that like they're not just disposable numbers, you know, and I guess for a number of factors that's changed now, but it sounds like you're really emphasizing like, no, if you're here, there's a great opportunity to really like have a stake in this operation and be really part about it. And I hear that a lot from people, in the sense that like that wasn't really the message before.
No,
you know, like that wasn't really how a career in hospitality was pitched to people. You know, it was almost like an individual grind by people who really wanted to succeed would find their way to succeeding. But like it wasn't like with the overarching help of the organization per se, you know. And I guess to your point, like these are great things that probably should have been there before, you know, like that this sort of like environment to help people progress. And I guess ultimately, like, that's a great thing, you know. And like, I guess long may it continue, I guess, like, you know. I suppose in that sense, and you'd also alluded to, like, you know, that you were talking about people in their late 20s, that type of managerial class doesn't quite exist anymore. And it's very hard to figure out how to like make those people into managers. I'm curious your take on sort of the cohort of like Gen Z types that have kind of come in post-COVID that didn't really work during COVID because everything was kind of locked down, yin yang, open, close, to then come into the workplace. Have they brought different kind of characteristics, behaviors, norms that are forcing you to kind of adapt?
It's a great question. You know, it's a different working thought process, I guess, for them. You could say it's not that it's not there, that the drive isn't there or anything like that. It's just that you don't know what you don't know. And, you know, coming into a unique industry like the restaurant or hospitality business, it's, you know, you get dirty sometimes, and, you know, the grind is hard. The stress is high. You know, things can go very sideways because people are not the nicest entities in the world, I should say, you know, when you're dealing with people and hunger. You know, so it's a learning environment for them, but it takes great leaders surrounding them to teach and coach and, you know, maybe coddle at times for this gen. But, you know, I see a lot of potential. You know, I still see the core of what this industry is in this generation. I think every generation will have it. It just might look a little different, but it's, you know, the core itself is there. The will to want to please people, the satisfaction in making someone's celebration special. You know, so I don't not see it. So I think again, it's just showing itself in a different way, and then having the right leaders to pull it out.
Totally. And it's interesting because when I put that question in originally, especially, I feel like Gen Z is so maligned as like a phrase. Like I'm almost like, but I've asked so many people that question or a form of that question now, and not one person is like, I guess, shit on it, if that makes sense.
Like,
you know, like, and you were so polite and articulate about that. And I think it's so true. I mean, like, ultimately, These are kids still looking for opportunity, and your job is to help them do the best job that they can do. And if you can meet them where they're at, like obviously there's specific. I had a call yesterday with operational excellence lead at Dave and Buster's, and we were laughing about like kids don't really pay attention to the notice board anymore, and they had to they're changing their ERP because nobody was checking emails, and it's like they want to send SMS to the kids now, like things like that are kind of different. But I'm like, guys, like get with the program. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, I guess like if kids aren't going to check their email, like meet them where they're at to remind them that their shift is at a certain time.
If you're not with that kind of technology, you're not going to get it. They're not going to get it. And it's our director of training, she created this unbelievable platform for training and stuff like that. But it's like a social media app that you message through, and that there's the feed boards on it and stuff, and you check everybody's posts, and it's created like a special environment just for them, and it's hot. It's on fire for them right now, as they would say, or maybe that was.
I think they say.
It's
like, that's Steve Buscemi. What up, young folks?
Exactly.
And I guess for you, because I mean, your role in and of itself, like you basically run like franchise operations, and so I'd be curious. Like, I mean, this is maybe a bit of a segue of a question, but the roadblocks that you run into, the kind of key challenges as director of franchise operations, like what are kind of 3 kind of high level ones that you kind of see?
Roadblocks are our partners themselves, really. A lot of the times you get someone that's coming into this industry that wants to own their own restaurant because they like going out to eat a lot. And I don't know if it's like a retirement plan and they just never experience this industry, because it's not a retirement plan. It is painstaking hard work every day if you're going to own a restaurant. And I think, a lot of people get into it, and especially franchising, buying a brand, and forget that they're buying something that's already successful, and trying to remind them that they chose this brand, that it is successful, and that, this isn't so-and-so's Crab Shack. This is Angry Crab Shack. And, and teaching them how to be restaurateurs, and whether or not they want to be involved in operations or more of a high level overseeing a couple locations, those type of things. I think that's the biggest roadblock. Obviously it can be coached with the right communication and buy-in from them. But outside of that, I think, what's glaring us right in the face here in the States is financing currently for new franchisees coming out, or new franchise partners. Nobody really wants to take out a $750,000 loan at 8%. So that one's put a pretty big block on us. But forecasts look at 2024 as a positive. Interest rates dropping. So we
please God.
We could potentially see an uptick again of people getting back out there and reinvesting, or opening up more, or starting a new brand, expanding their portfolios. So that's another big one for us. And then, but outside of that, supply chains have gotten back for the most part. Construction is moving along. We just opened one in Seattle. We got another one opening up in Acworth, Georgia next month. And nice. And they've gone pretty smoothly. So feels like we're back on track with those type of things for sure.
Do you know what's interesting when you mentioned about your partners, for example? I do this a lot because you guys are an extraordinary success. Like to have multiple locations. Okay. Yeah. Like anybody, I don't want to say anybody could, but I'm saying like in the sense that like there's no like patent on like seafood and Cajun inspired food. Like somebody could like literally open one next door and call it the Happier Crab. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like fundamentally, there's a secret sauce for scaling those businesses, because as you're well aware of, to even open a second location is like literally a Herculean feat. And I've definitely felt and heard this from so many people and this is going to sound very complimentary to you. So like, you know, like enjoy this little compliment I'm going to give you.
Thanks.
It's like, it is the culture that can't be replicated. You know, like it takes so much, and it takes great people, great leadership to open up these other kinds of locations. And it's interesting to me when I hear you mention that comment about the partner, because it's like, it is kind of true that like what you need is like people to understand that like to make this entire org a success is like full on buy-in, because like to your point, like hospitality in a retirement space, like it is very much like full on, and having that sort of like love for it. The one thing it sounds so corny, cringy, hackneyed, whatever phrase you want to say for it, but I think like you're such a prime example that has such a love for hospitality. You've done it for 21 years. You've done it. You've been in the kitchen. You've picked up hot pans. You've burnt your hands. You know, you've like opened that dishwasher and like had all the steam come in your face. Like you love the space.
I can still smell it.
Yes, yes. Taste for my taste buds. You know, and it's like when I think about that, I think about what separates like, you know, small brands from great brands like yours, and like, you know, 2 more locations next month. Unbelievable. Like you guys are going to go from strength to strength to strength. If you can get the financing for even more and we get interest down, you guys are going to blow up. Yeah. Is that like, it is a culture, and it is like having people like you with a love for hospitality are what actually kind of separates the good from great. That is definitely something I have absolutely seen speaking to like peers of yours. I'm speaking to so many COOs, like director of operations, director of new stores, that kind of stuff. And it's the same thing. It's people like you with that background of love for like the industry itself is what separates the Happier Crab, one location next door to the Angry Crab Shack with all of its locations. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I was trying to be complimentary, because it sounds to me like you've really kind of like got it down, and it sounds like that this is like going to be something that's going to like grow and grow and grow like very, very quickly.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's I think it's, you know, the more you have at the top that to your point, love the industry like we do, it trickles down, you know, and that's where you're getting the buy-in from either, you know, general managers who get buy-in from their AGMs and assistants to the staff working hard or extra for those managers, you know, because the care level is there, especially in a brand like this where it's so easy to get behind a lot of the causes. You know, our franchise partners, when they sign on, they're signing on to agree that they will be donating X amount of dollars a year to a local children's hospital in that area. You know, that's a requirement for us. So it's every bit of that that we pass along to our partners and to our operators every day. So I appreciate that. And I think, you know, I hope it shines to our people, you know, through all the restaurants. So
I've no doubt it does. And I think on that, I think we can end the podcast.